Chapter 3. Cam. As the sound of the only motor-driven vehicle they had heard in the past 3 hours faded in the distance, Jen tugged at Cam's arm.
We still need bikes.
I know. I wish they'd had him here. A one-stop shop would have been nice. Jen stared up at him, frightened by the words spoken by the biker just before he'd raced off. Normally an outwardly stoic woman, Jen was sensitive, but only he got to see that side of her. She was a driven woman, having graduated from Cal Berkeley and then going on to Santa Clara, where she completed her Juris Doctorate degree before beginning to practice law. While most lawyers were nothing more than paper pushers, negotiators, and legal document creators, Jen had been a trial attorney, and a good one at that. She was highly sought after by some of the largest firms in the country and from both sides of the aisle, defense and plaintiff. She practiced product liability law and had risen through the ranks of her current firm, though that wasn't the firm she'd started at. After having the 2 children, life had taken her on a languid, serpentine career path at first, but over the past 5 years, she'd risen to stardom within the ranks of her peers. She spoke at seminars and hosted national functions, speaking on ethics and client relations, all the while holding down her position within the Griffin family as mother, wife, and co-provider. In Jen's world, she was trained to deal with disaster. When it hit, it was usually to the tune of millions of dollars being paid by her client. She'd only lost once, but it stung so bad it haunted her to the present day. Now, she felt wildly out of her element, not being trained to deal with matters outside the confines of law and order. Her husband, on the other hand, was trained and had dealt with matters outside of the boundaries of normal, good human behavior. Because of this, she now turned to him, just like he would have turned to her in the event he'd been sued before all the outages began.
Cam, I'm really scared. What's going on? This isn't normal, none of it. We just hiked up the 101 to get here, and there are jetliners crashed back at the airport and no police or fire anywhere.
Let's get the kids off the street and into a hotel if they'll take us, he suggested distractedly as he rubbed his thumb and fingers down the side of his face.
Jen jerked his arm. Cameron, are you listening to me? Something is really wrong.
He stared down at his wife, their 2 children huddled close together just behind their mother. He felt helpless, unable to provide the basics for the people most important to him, and now he felt anger welling within him. It felt warm at first, as his frustration morphed into white-hot rage, heating his insides as the feeling enveloped his entire being.
We're going to the hotel, and if anyone messes with us, I'll make 'em regret it,
he rasped, his voice a reflection of the emotions roiling inside of him. 2 blocks up, he made a right turn into the courtyard-style parking lot of the Bay Area Inn. He would have never chosen the inn under normal circumstances, especially considering the looks of the people standing in the darkened doorways of the various rooms, but beggars couldn't be choosers. Today, Cam Griffin was panhandling. It took some coaxing on Jen's part to get the Indian woman inside the locked lobby to open the front doors and tell them she had no way of renting them a room for the evening. The way the woman's eyes flitted back and forth between Jen, who she was speaking with, and the children, told Cam he should stay out of the conversation. Jen must have noticed the woman's furtive glances at their children and ramped up her plea for shelter in the name of her offspring's safety. When the woman at the inn seemed to agree the children could not sleep on the streets, Jen went a step further and offered their credit card instead of cash. He listened as Jen expertly downplayed the situation with the power, assuring the woman she could take a carbon copy or simply jot down the card's number, date of expiration, and 3-digit code, which she could use to charge them for the room once the power was restored. When the Indian woman handed Jen an actual key, it dawned on him that hotels with card access would be experiencing some very real lockout issues right about now. As they left the lobby, he could feel the eyes of the current hotel residents on his beleaguered family as they made their way to room 18 on the ground level.
The people standing in the doorways seemed like the weekend crowd at all the other scumbag-infested cheap hotels and motels he'd seen during his law enforcement career. Pimps, drug dealers, and criminals wanting to party without bringing the heat down on their mother or grandmother's place sought out these low-end accommodations for their sundry and nefarious activities. He took solace in knowing no one from the hood would be driving up here to score dope, and most of the Johns, which were what men who paid for prostitution were called, would be stranded at home, work, or somewhere in between, trying to get home to their families like everyone else. As the door closed behind him, he kicked himself for not looking for a knife while they'd been at the sporting goods store. He spun the deadbolt and pulled the chain across as a backup. "Water pressure is terrible," Jen called from the bathroom. He moved across the room, past the two beds, and into the bathroom where Jen was washing her face. "Is it hot?" Jen continued scrubbing as she answered, "Warmish." "Water heater is probably almost empty," he noted. Jen straightened, toweled her face, and stared at her husband. "No hot water?" "I bet tomorrow warm, water is gone," he replied, the truth darkening the edge of his response. Jen pushed past him as she called out to the children, "You kids get in the shower now." He leaned out to see both kids seated on the bed, staring blankly at the blackened screen of the TV. Normally, it would have taken some work to pry them away from the tube and into the bath or shower. With nothing on television, they got to their feet and trudged into the tiny bathroom while Jen ran the warm water and got them started. Although the days of showering with each other had passed, Jen insisted they jump in, clean up, and get out as a unit. In half the time it normally would have taken them to finish washing up, ice-cold water chased the adolescents from the shower. Great, Cam thought as the kids came clambering out of the cold water. He and Jen would be showering in the frigid water, or they wouldn't be showering at all. After a 4-hour flight and half a day of walking, he decided he'd take a cold shower now, then warm up under the covers of the bed in lieu of trying to brave the cold cleanse in the morning. An hour later, the entire family was washed and in fresh clothes, sitting on the edge of the two beds. The room was quite a bit darker now that the sun was beginning to set, and Cam wondered what they should do for light, or if they should do anything at all. Maybe a light would attract unwanted attention, and without a weapon of any sort, he'd rather avoid attention. When the shadows created by the light able to penetrate the thin curtains elongated inside the room, stretched up the walls, and then melted into an inky blackness, Jen and the kids crawled under the covers. Layla wanted to sleep with a parent, so Jen took her while Taylor leapt across the 2-foot space between the two beds and landed raucously on Cam's bed. If the night's sleep wasn't going to be bad enough with his worrying about their future, Taylor would almost certainly make it unbearable with his constant kicking and tussling about in his sleep. The first gunshots came 2 hours after the kids had drifted off to sleep. Cam wasn't sure if Jen was still awake until he heard her strained voice call out softly to him from the darkness. "Cam?" "It's okay, babe. They're out there doing whatever they're doing, and we're safe in here," he reassured her. The sporadic gunfire sounded off and on all night, which in his opinion was out of the ordinary, even if they'd been in Oakland or East Palo Alto. The gunfire always went to bed with the crooks, but tonight it sounded throughout the night, with not a single wail of a police siren in response. Feeling Taylor's warm frame lying next to him, he marveled at how his children were able to sleep through all the chaos happening right on the other side of their flimsy hotel door. He felt as though he'd only just been able to fall into a deep sleep when light cascaded through a thin opening in the curtains, filling the room with a warm glow of the morning sun. He wasn't sure what time it was, but felt confident he could have slept another 4 hours under different circumstances. When the kids stirred and Taylor got up to pee, Cam slid from the bed, wanting to check the parking lot. He didn't want Taylor or Layla flinging open the curtains and seeing a dead body laying in the middle of the motel property. Although, if there was one, what was he going to do about it?
The parking lot was clear, and other than the vehicles stopped along the El Camino Real, the world seemed quite normal. He pulled on his clothes and cracked the front door open, poking his head out. He immediately caught the smell of bacon. He ducked back inside and spun to tell Jen. Bacon. Jen slid from under the covers, already clothed, and moved to the door so she could take a whiff. Both kids pushed between their parents, eager to smell the bacon wafting from somewhere not too far away. I'm going out and see what's going on, he said. Maybe the hotel has a kitchen. He knew that probably wasn't the case, but the food smelled so good he wanted to see about getting in on some breakfast action for himself and his family. They'd eaten chips, cookies, and some power bars and called it dinner the evening prior, so a hot meal would be a real treat. Outside, he quickly identified the source of bacon smell 4 doors down from room 18. 2 black men and 2 white girls were standing over a small Weber barbecue, grilling bacon and what looked like biscuits. When he exited the room, the men glanced up, but didn't seem alarmed by his sudden appearance. He gave them a nod and strode in their direction. A smile painted on his face. Is this the complimentary breakfast they were talking about? He joked as he neared the group. At first, no one from the neighboring group said or did a thing. Then the guy tending to the bacon shot him a huge, gold-grilled smile. Y'all just came in last night, right? Cam nodded. Yeah, we flew in and now we're stranded. Where'd y'all come from? We live in Tennessee near Nashville. The man dropped his bacon on the grill and straightened. Damn, boy, my mama lives in Memphis. Ain't 3 hours from y'all. Right down the 40, Cam said, referring to Interstate 40, which connected Nashville to Memphis. I was born there, the man continued. Been out here for about 5 years now. Why would you leave that state for here? The bacon cook cocked his head to one side, studying Cam for a moment. Memphis ain't Nashville, white boy, he scolded. Cam chuckled low at first, and then laughed out loud. You are not lying about that, man. And my name's Cameron. Both men burst out laughing over the barbecue until the bacon cook was able to gather himself. Of course it is. White boy Cameron. I like you, man. You got guts coming out here talking to us businessmen. Cam smiled wryly at the other man's comment. Family's hungry, and I have cash. And some free advice for you and your friends in exchange for a little breakfast. Just 2 dudes doing a little business, he offered. The young man flipped a piece of bacon as he mulled over the proposition. What's the advice? He finally asked, meeting Cam's gaze. Cam smiled again, only this time it was genuine. Over breakfast, man. I'll give you the cash up front, but we talk about what's going on while we eat. 1 biscuit and 2 pieces of bacon for each of you. 100. Done, Cam said without hesitation. The bacon cook turned to his friend. Damn, I should have asked for 200. 5 minutes later, his wallet was $100 lighter, and the Griffins were wolfing down warm biscuits and bacon. What's the advice, Cameron? The man asked again. Cam swallowed the last of his portion of biscuits and bacon and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. This is not a power outage. Well, technically it is, but not like you or I know a power outage. All 4 hosts stared blankly back at him, waiting for the punchline. Cam twitched his shoulders. I think America is at war and some country knocked us offline. No power, and everything that uses power is ruined. The bacon man shook his head in disbelief. Now how would someone go and do that? It's called an EMP. It's sort of a nuke that goes off a couple 100 miles up, and the power surge or pulse it causes is what kills all the electronics. I don't know too much about those type of weapons, but I was a Marine and I've been a cop in my past life. I've been part of some talks about what cities would do after an attack like this. Both male hosts' eyes narrowed at the mention of white boy Cameron being a cop. So, what'd they do? The bacon man asked. Cam was confused. What did who do? The cities. What was their plan? Oh, Yeah. They had no plan, he answered with a snort. The man's nostrils flared as his mind picked through the possibilities posed for him and his business ventures. I ain't seen no cops, the man murmured, more to himself than anyone else. And you won't, Cam confirmed. Listen, guys, he began. We got to get going, but I want you and us to be cool if our paths ever cross again in the future. You fed my family, and in return, I gave you a head start on all the other rival businessmen in the area. If you start now, you'll be way ahead of most people who are waiting for someone to turn the power back on. The bacon man stepped past the barbecue and extended a hand to him. Name's Lucas, and we're more than good, Nashville. Cam gave Lucas a tight-lipped smile as he shook the thug's hand. You're going to need food, brother. Lots of food. That will be cash going forward, Memphis, he advised with a coy smile. Heading up the street after leaving Lucas and his crew, Jen walked in silence while Cam thought about what he'd just done. Giving a criminal the leg up was not sitting well with him, but the fact that he'd been able to interact with them, get his family fed, and possibly made an ally for the future helped to blunt his dislike for doing anything positive for a bad guy.